Okay, welcome everyone. Very thrilled to do this segment. I want to go back to 1975. A picture of me with a quite different hairstyle when I was wrestled at 140 for Newton South High School, and next to my beloved coach, Coach Kojoyian. And to do a tribute tonight and go down memory lane. His son Armen is here, and Armen, thanks for coming in, and it really is an honor to do a tribute to your dad, because he touched through his, we talked about 62 years of coaching, he touched thousands of lives in a very positive way.
Yes, Howie, I want to thank you for Coach too, and my family, and all the Newton South family. I think that it's a great honor what you're doing to remember my dad, and he's looking down on you. And I know you were such a character. He's reserving some choice words for you too, Howie. And yeah, he started, as I said, 1952. I think he stopped coaching football. It was 2014. So that was, a hell of a run he had. He accomplished a lot. He influenced the lives of thousands of boys. And he created a lot of great men, and he created a lot of honors for everybody. He was a big asset to two communities that he was a coach in Massachusetts, and that was Westboro, Mass. He went back to his high school once he graduated from college at George Washington University, and he started out there as a high school football coach. He coached football, basketball, and baseball, if you can believe it. And then he went to Newton South, and as you well know his history there. And then once he left Newton South, he went to the Virginia area. And his first coaching job there was in the Washington, D.C. parochial league of St. John's, Gonzaga, DeMatha. So it was quite exceptional athletes in that league as well. And then he went to Virginia. He coached at South Lakes High School. South Lakes produced Grant Hill, Calvin Hill's son. He went to Madison High School, and he coached at Paul VI. So it was a great, great career. And Howie and I have been sharing a lot of stories here this afternoon, things I hadn't heard, and I've been sharing things Howie hasn't heard. So, and all you guys out there that know my dad and remembered him, every day was a story, and they're great remembrances for all of us.
Absolutely, and I remember your dad being a great motivator. He would get us fired up for a match. Especially, I remember one team he absolutely got more fired up. He loved to beat Newton North. And I was so proud that my 3 years of wrestling that we never lost to Newton North. He used to say, I want this one more than other, because Newton North was a much bigger school than us, and the only sport we were better than them was wrestling. And the fact that we beat them all 3 years, and we beat them pretty good my senior year, I know that meant a lot to Coach. He loved those rivalries, and it was really special when we beat Newton North.
Well, he liked to beat Norm Walker. Norm Walker was the coach there, started the program, and Norm Walker was the head football coach there. But they're also great buddies. They were Norm Walker coached with George Winkler before there was two high schools in Newton, and it was Jim Ronayne at Newton North. So there's a great history that goes back through Newton North when it was just Newton High School. And even the great Don Sutherland was a baseball coach at the old Newton High School.
And, besides, we should not forget that not only was your father a great coach, but he also impacted not just guys, but girls. He was a great teacher as well. Let's talk about that he, besides being a great, football coach, wrestling coach, he also was a teacher in school as well. So he impacted not just boys, but girls as well, being a great school teacher as well.
Yes, he came to Newton South to be a biology teacher, and he started his career in Westboro. He taught actually history and biology. So you could speak to him at length about most things related to history. He was a real history buff. But biology he knew very well, and I always remember his favorite topic was genetics. He could sit down and show me at the kitchen table how genes worked and the gene concepts. I could never figure it out, but he knew it. But he was a very revered teacher as well, and students wanted to be in his class.
You know, I remember when I was in junior high school, I had heard about your dad with reverence from my older cousin John Fries, and about what a great motivator, what a great guy he is, how all the guys, loved him. He would, repeat some of his great catchphrases and his motivational speeches. And, one thing I'm proud about is John was an all-state wrestler. I think at 169 he finished third in the state. I was all-state. I finished sixth in 1975. And both of us made it to the semifinals of the states, and we were both one match away from getting into the finals. And that was something I remember I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to be a part of the Newton South wrestling legacy, because before it was a great program. Your dad really built up a dominant wrestling legacy, from the Freddie Virgilios, the Billy Hurwitzes, the Berkowitzes. I wrestled with the state champion, Mike Shockett. Right after me, Greg McDonald won a state championship. But it was that tradition that your father built up, that so many of these people wanted to be a part of the Newton South wrestling tradition and wrestle for Coach Kojoyian.
Well, he took the program over from Coach Winkler. I think it was 1967. And that first year, he won the districts in the state of Massachusetts. Then we went on to the state tournament. We didn't place in the state tournament that year, but he knew how to brand the team long before that was a concept. He started to take photographs of all of us. He would take the newspaper clippings. He would post them all around the high school. He would put them on the bulletin boards that had the glass covers. So he created a lot of dynamics, but the success of the team created its own dynamic and gravity, and you could almost gauge it by the attendance to the matches. I remember there was a time, you remember the gym. The gym had that dividing wall.
Yeah.
And I remember a time, and it was a specific match. It was Ashland or Milford came over, and they had won like some could have been 40-some matches in a row, and that was a Tuesday afternoon match. And I remember my mother. I was looking for my mother in the bleachers, and she hadn't gotten there yet. And I see tons of people coming in, but more than I had ever seen on a Tuesday afternoon match. And I said to my mom, where have you been? She says, oh, you can't even get a parking space in the parking lot. Well, Ashland came over in like 4 or 5 buses, and all the families from Ashland came over. So my dad goes to George Winkler and says, George, you got to take down that, open the wall up. He says, yeah, we're having gymnastics practice on the other side. He says, I don't give a damn, open the wall up. He said, so we opened the wall up, we moved the mat out into the middle of the gym floor, filled both sides of the bleachers, and the place went berserk. It was just fantastic. And that kind of excitement went through the school, and that excitement went through the school year after year, that it just drove attendance, and young guys just wanted to be on the team. Everybody wanted to be part of the team. So winning was big, and the competition was big, and it created many years of success. It created close to, I think it's 18-year run he had that was unbelievable.
My fondest memory is I remember our team in 1975. We had 15 dual meets. We were 14-1, and the only match we lost was to our arch rival Wayland. And it still bothers me to this day that, that was a tight match. I beat my guy at 140, Brett Dalton, and that was a great thrill because he was a really good wrestler. I think he was a state champion the following year. He wrestled me as a junior. He was a transfer from another school. But anyway, we had 2 matches during that match where we had guys pinned. And the kids from Wayland had their backs flat on the mat, and damn ref wouldn't call the pin. And it just so irritated me because if he had called those 2 pins, we would have beaten Wayland. But he didn't call the pins. We ended up losing a very tight match. But those are great memories. I can remember, our whole team from Bobby Paisner and Chuck Dippo and Bruce Ariff and, my buddy who's going to watch this in London, Peter Nathanson was the captain at 134. Then we had Craig Sousey. Aaron Moynihan was a great wrestler, wrestled in the upper weights. And then our 2 top wrestlers, Peter Maples was built like he had muscles on top of muscles. And I remember kids used to be afraid to take the match. And Scott Groper was an excellent heavyweight as well. And I just remember that match against Wayland. It was standing room only. It was a packed gym. And it was back and forth. And even though we lost, we gave Wayland a run for the money that night.
Oh, I remember, actually my senior team, we were 15-1. The only match we lost to was Wayland as well. It's funny, you and I are on Long Island tonight because the coach for Wayland came up from Amityville in 1967, and he turned that high school program around, made them phenomenal. And at that same period, we got a great wrestler. His family moved to Newton from Valley Stream, and his name was Steve Ekin. So actually, both those guys are big influences in wrestling in the state. They changed it quite a bit, and that was kind of the inception of wrestling becoming big in Massachusetts. It was starting to attract bigger and bigger crowds. The Boston Globe would pick up on it, and it was becoming mainstream. Now it's a huge sport with several tournaments, and high school kids are wrestling year-round.
And I remember your dad had like a magnetic, outgoing personality. And I remember one thing is that he was very, very personable, and he was very influential. I remember my sophomore year, John Stallo was a great, great basketball player. But your dad kept after him and after him. You gotta wrestle first. You gotta wrestle first. Finally, he got him to wrestle. And I remember my sophomore year, the match came down to heavyweight, and I forget who we were wrestling, but going into the heavyweight match, we were down by 4 or 5 points, and the only way for us to win is Stallo had to pin this guy, and the noise was deafening. It was so loud, and halfway through the match, the referee had to stop the match because the kid bit John in the hand. He said, "Ref, the guy bit." So whatever. So came down to like the final 30 seconds, and Stallo puts the kid on his back, and time's ticking away. 20, 50, and then like 10 seconds left. You got the pin, and your father jumped like 10 feet in the air. It was a night I'll never forget, and the whole gym erupted. I mean, that was the type of when Newton South wrestled in the big match, that gym was packed.
Remind me, I have another biting story I want to...
Okay, go ahead.
But I want to talk about John Stallo. Coach actually gave him the nickname Moose. So all of us say, I don't know if you remember, we all call him Moose. But John went on to have one incredible wrestling career at the University of Rhode Island, at Newton South. At the University of Rhode Island, he was a fantastic wrestler. He was just inducted last year in the Wrestling Coaches Hall of Fame. He's produced many great wrestlers at Newton North High School. He has done just a phenomenal job. He's really become a significant, great character in Newton, contributing to the community. But who now? Oh, so Newton South had a heavyweight. I forget the year. His name was Burzon.
Bruce Burzon, the redhead.
Yeah, Bruce Burzon. So this was a match against Milford High School. It was coached at that time, I think, by Corbin. And on the heavyweight for Milford at that time was Howie Long. Howie Long of NFL fame. And Howie grew up actually in Chelsea. Maybe had some problems at home, so his dad sent him to live with his uncle in Milford. So Berzon was beating the hell out of Howie Long in a match. Howie bit him. So the match stopped and Berzon won the match.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then, but we got to tell the story about you riding with Freddie Smerlas.
I mean, we went to a tournament, I think it was in Springfield, Mass. And Freddie Smerlas was the heavyweight for Waltham. And then he went to play football, Boston College, and he had a great career for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, all pro.
All pro.
Several years.
Yeah, and he's still on, I think EEI now or whatever. But great guy. And so we're on the bus coming home, and I said, Freddie, I bet I can eat a whole quart of ice cream. He said, no way, Apple, you can, no way. And I did, and I ended up winning the bet against Freddie Smerlas.
You guys, yeah, I remember my dad over the years repeated that story 100 times. Because there was a quadrangle meet in Western Mass, I believe, with Springfield Tech, Springfield Classical, Waltham, and you guys.
Yep.
And you must have stopped somewhere for food, but you bought like a quart of ice cream.
Yep.
And Freddie made a bet with you. No, it was too funny. But the stories, so, you know, many of them we can't repeat here, the things we did and got into. But you told me one tonight I couldn't believe.
Yeah, I'll repeat that one. So I'm in the semifinals of the district tournament, and I'm wrestling the kid from Wayland again, Brett Dalton. And this kid had incredible stamina. He was just like nonstop all the time. You look at him, you get tired. I mean, the kid had an amazing energy. So I said to my buddy Peter Nathanson before the match, I said, you know what? Halfway through, if I have a chance, I'm going to take an injury so I can take a break, for a couple minutes, take a breather. So sure enough, it was like late in the first quarter, first period. We go out of bounds, and he pushes me up against the wall. And I start screaming, oh no, my back is killing me! And I go down. Coach Kojoyian comes over to me, real nervous. Apple, you okay? Apple, you okay? I said, Coach, I'm faking. I just need a couple minute breather. He walks up and says, get me a doctor! Get me a doctor! My kid is really in bad shape! Get me a doctor! Get me a doctor! Oh, it was great. He sold it tremendously. And I went on, and I ended up beating him again by 1 point, so that was great. I remember, my first, we wrestled, our state tournament that year was in Brockton, Massachusetts, which is a famous town in Massachusetts. Rocky Marciano's from Brockton, Marvin Hagler's from Brockton, so it was a famous town. The first day, I ended up beating 3 kids. 2 of them were county champions, so I got to be in the semifinals the next day. I didn't win, but it was just a great thrill, to wrestle for Coach. But the thing that really amazed me about your dad, when people hit their mid-70s to 80s, they're thinking of retiring. Your father was coaching high school football at 86 years old. He's on the high school field, motivating, getting in the face, and coaching high school football at 86 years old. That's incredible. I can just thinking about it. Your dad is still coaching high school football at 86. Let's talk about that. That your dad, when most people are well retired, is still coaching high school football at 86 years old.
Yeah, he was very passionate for the game. He just, the game was everything to him. It opened many doors up. He would have never been able to go to college. His parents would have never been able to afford it, and he got a scholarship. He was a young high school boy from Westboro High School. He went to George Washington University, and he wanted to give back, and he just couldn't get away from the game, the competition. He was a huge competitor. Everything he did, he wanted to win. It was a unique quality, but he was also a great motivator. I mean, I could turn my face away on the field, look at him on the sideline, or look at him at the side of the match. He could make a facial expression that would want to make you run through a wall, and I know you've seen it. He had gestures, he had words. You know, he could pick 6 choice words to just make you go over the top. But the coaching was something he would have never given up if he didn't have to. And you know, the odd thing is, in maybe the last 2 weeks, I kind of knew there was a point he was going to stop speaking before he passed away. And so we called up a lot of the old ball players, and he was still coaching. He was still giving them advice. He was still telling them what to do. And this is he's at the very end. And that day, we must have made 6 or 7 phone calls. And by the time he was done, I could see his speaking was even getting a little worse, but I don't know what you call him in the hospital. An orderly or an assistant came in, but he came in with a blood pressure machine. And my dad looks at the boy. He could have been a young man boy. And the first thing he says to him, he says, "What position did you play?" And he's looking at my dad. He doesn't know what this is. He looks at me. And then my dad barks out again, "What position did you play?" And he looks at me and I said, "My dad wants to know if you play football." I kind of whispered to him. So he says back to my dad, he said, "Yo, I was a defensive back. I was pretty good." He says, "Did you play in college?" "No, I'm not going yet." And then he said, "You know what? Send me your films. I'll get you into college."
Wow.
So there was all the way to the end, he was thinking about how to better a kid's life. And I don't think this kid had any idea. But that was
Him.
probably, it was him. And that might have been the last significant conversation with coherency that I heard from him.
The one thing Armen and you share, which is sad, but I want to touch on it, is that my dad passed away on his birthday, which was April 6th, 1989, so yesterday marked 30 years. And I remember the year after I graduated in 1975, I ran into your brother Artie at UMass a year or 2 later, and he was so devastated because your mother was very sick. And your father and mother, I mean, she would be at the matches. Sometimes you would talk about what a great cook she was and making the Armenian food. And
Great cook.
yeah, and it was so sad that he lost the love of his life so early in life. Talk about the fact that they had such a wonderful marriage. They were so perfect for each other. And how devastating it was for your dad to lose your mom so early in his life.
Well, I think it was very devastating, but my dad, that part of him, he would maybe close off. He would deal with it on his own. He wasn't one to look for what you call sympathy in any way. But, the first year is hard, then you start to assimilate it, and then you progress in your life. It starts to take a new course. Well, he started to become very good friends after that with Don Sutherland. And I'm sure you know Donald and Donald's antics.
He was a great track coach. He taught my brother how to do the shot put.
Well,
great track coach.
Yeah, they were great characters together. So I could go out some nights and eat. I'd take a date out to eat, and I'd look in the corner of the restaurant. And in the corner of the restaurant's my dad and Donald eating, having drinks.
Yeah.
But my dad and Donald were at opposite spectrums, but they loved a little scotch and cigars. And they would be up all night fighting and cursing with each other over politics. Of course, you know what spectrum my dad was from and where Donald was from, and it was hilarious. But losing my mom, but he still coached, having the community of the guys in sports, just helped him get through it. you know, and then you get involved with the kids' lives again. So that keeps you know, it keeps you youthful, and he stepped youthful throughout his whole life because of the kids and because of the competition. I think I was very lucky to have a father as a coach because you know what, the life's exciting. You live through the coach's eyes.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say my dad didn't sit at a desk. He didn't sit at a desk for 9 to 5. He wasn't boring.
He loved coaching.
Yeah, I went, let's see, first grade, second grade. He says, you're going to come to practice every day. I used to walk from elementary school in Westboro all the way up to practice, and he would keep a locker for me with a uniform. He made me put the uniform go out to practice with him. So I was around him in the coaching career literally every second till I went to college, and then I went on and had my own life. But I always made an effort to see as many games as I could, as many wrestling matches. I would go to Virginia, Washington, D.C. to see as many games as I could. And, you know, I was always checking every Saturday. I think it felt like 100 years. Every Saturday I'd call him to see how he did, no matter what year it was. You know, and we always conversed about the team. But it's glorious. I think to be in a coach's family, a coach's son or daughter, is very special. I don't think coaches get the degree of regard they should in today's society because they're highly significant. I think there's not a more important character to influence kids.
And you know what? I never ran into anyone that ever had a bad thing to say about your dad. We all loved him. He had a personality. Yeah, he was tough, and he would motivate you, but he had a warm side. You'd see him in the hallways. He'd put his arm around you. You know, he was, you know, before practice, you could fool around with him. But, oh, he was a great motivator. I remember, like, we'd win on a Friday night. We'd have a big win, and we'd go to practice on Saturday afternoon or Monday, wherever it was. And the first thing he would say to us is, fellas, don't rest on your laurels. What you did Friday night is over with. You got a match coming up in 2 days. You better be prepared. Don't rest on your laurels. It's not going to help you. You got to get focused and motivated for the next match. And I always remember that he would never let us get too high, and was always on to that next match and get fired up for that next match.
Oh, he really, you know, he showed a lot of compassion to all his athletes, and he actually made us wrestle the next day. Yeah, anyway, even if we won, you know, football we never practiced the next day because that was the day for films and all. He made us, I think, practice within a day. I wasn't there then, but he made the wrestling team, I know, practice within a day after the 1978 blizzard. I don't know if you recall that.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah, so he had the keys to the gym, and he was letting the kids in himself. Or he would go pick you up. If the roads were passable, he would drive you home, pick you up, and make sure you come to practice. You know, his favorite phrase was, come hell or high water,
Yeah.
you better be at practice.
I remember the words, by Jesus, you gotta get it done, stop loafing, by Jesus.
Well, there's some things I can't use the language
Yeah.
here, which was common of him to say. But there was something I wanted to say I forgot about.
There's one thing, you mentioned before the show, and I know we have a lot of guys from the 60s and 70s and 80s that are going to be enjoying this video as we pay tribute to Coach. But there's one tragedy that I know really affected your dad from your year. Danny Mendelsohn was a great wrestler and a football player, and through a horrendous tragedy, he died in high school. Talk about that impact, about losing a great wrestler, a great football player, and a young man just starting out in life. I know that was so devastating to your dad and the Newton South community.
Oh, I think Danny was one of the most gifted athletes I had seen my dad coach over his whole career. in his junior year in high school, he was getting letters from the Philadelphia Phillies, the Orioles, to go to their training camps. He was getting letters from University of Wisconsin, a couple other Big Ten schools to be. He was a hell of a halfback. And if you watched films of him that year, that was 1967. On every kickoff, he used to go down the field like a laser beam. He I don't know how he did it. It would just be like a flash, and he'd go down the field, and he always made the tackle on every kickoff. But he was an incredible athlete, and I remember a game up at Melrose, football game, and I was still in junior high then, my last year, and so I was like the water boy, and I'd take water out on the field. And I remember Danny got his bell rung. You remember those water bottles with the snow?
Yeah.
And if you pushed it, it would act like a squirt gun. So I gave him the water bottle, and he had his mouth open, but he had the nozzle pointed to me, and he's squirting me. And then I remember Tommy Rizzuti looking at him and said, "Hey, Danny, you got to go out now." So the trainers had to look at him because he got a good bell rung. But and Danny's dad was very instrumental in the athletics in the South as well. He was at every wrestling practice, every football practice.
So you really got
The year Danny passed away, I'd say that was his junior year.
his junior year.
Yeah, because my sophomore year, and that was a great era from the first 1962 up to 67. South had great football teams. So I got to South in 68. In that year, we went into shock. And only recently, some of us old guys talk about it. That I think that first year, young kids don't know how to deal with a death like that. And it was a shock through the team. We would have been a hell of a team. But we're all one a half step slower. And a half step, you get beat in football. And Danny passed away the last day of school. Due to complications from surgery at Newton Wellesley Hospital. And I remember my dad and George Winkler going to see him literally that day, and the doctor said it's too late. But just an incredible athlete, great story.
So, I mean, in wrapping up, if you had to do an essay talking about your dad's legacy, how would you describe your dad's legacy and the impact he had on thousands of young men coaching throughout an amazing career of 62 years? How would you describe, in a nutshell, Coach Kojoyian's legacy?
Oh, highly transformative. He transformed, in high school you're transforming a boy to a man. And he would say often, football's a man's game. It's not up to a certain level. Yeah, you play Pee Wee, you play Pop Warner, maybe you play junior high. You get to high school, it starts to get serious. The hitting is serious, the attitude's serious. And I even remember my sophomore year, you're a little scared, you're a little timid. So his role to make you tougher and to show you strong fundamentals, how to protect yourself on the field, that's pretty big. But his transformative power into taking a boy to a man was powerful and making him a winner. Of course, the same with wrestling. Wrestling is it's a form of a pugilistic sport. It's a form of combat too. It's very classical. It's a classical Olympic sport.
And he was ahead of his time. Like these, the wardrobe that we had, it was so ahead of his time.
Yeah.
But he wanted us to look good. He wanted us to go on the mat and look better than anybody else. He was so ahead of his time. He was an innovator, a motivator, and his legacy is just one of a great person, a great coach who impacted so many thousands of people in such a positive way.
Well, it's eternal. I think it's eternal because it gets passed down now from you guys that are grown men now to your children. You tell these stories, we're talking. Today, we're telling stories. I calculated from 52 to probably 2016. He probably touched the lives of a few thousand kids and, and families, more. Because there was a time he was coaching 3 sports.
Wow.
Yeah, and let me tell you, he wasn't maybe the best basketball coach, but they were the most foul teams because all they did was bang people under the boards. You know, I'm going to tell you a story. When he was baseball coach, he coached Harry Crump. Harry Crump was one of the greatest fullbacks he ever had, one of the greatest fullbacks at Boston College, and was drafted by the Boston Patriots, was the first fullback I think they had before Jim Nance. But Harry was his catcher as well in baseball. And he used to always tell Harry, whenever you get the ball and the guy is running from third base, I want you to go down the line and deck the guy. And I can remember now, I was a little kid and I'd sit on the bench, and I just remember Harry getting the ball, take his mask off and go down the field with the ball and go down third baseline with the ball in his glove and deck the runner. And that's how he was. He took the game of football and applied it to everything. He actually applied it to wrestling. Because if you know, everybody from about 145 up, weight class, he tried to get from the football team.
Absolutely.
Except your cousin, John.
Yeah.
But John was tough.
Yeah.
He always used to say about your cousin, John, he says, you know, Freezy has him fooled. I said, he said, you know, he's quiet. He's quiet. They don't know what he's thinking. He doesn't say much. But you know what? John would beat you every wrestling match. John was a very tough guy.
And my cousin John lost his dad when he was 13, and I think Coach Kojoyian was like a father figure to John, and really filled a huge void in his life. And like so many, my cousin John idolized your dad, and I idolized your dad, and thousands of people. And I'm blessed that he touched my life and made my high school years so much more special.
Oh, you're lucky. You're a lucky guy, Howie. We're all lucky. Everyone I think I told Aaron Monahan on Facebook the other day, we all belong to a close fraternity now. We're all very lucky because we paid the dues, we honored the coach, and we went through hell. Because he it wasn't easy to be under his tutelage. It was hell. We worked hard, but we achieved great things. And I was telling your cousin John, it feels so good now. That we're only here now because we achieved great things because of him. So it's an honor. We wouldn't be here if you and I met in a history class.
Yeah.
And I remember who won the Civil War or something.
Yeah.
We're here because of him.
Absolutely.
All right, let's have a nice round for Armen. And it was such a great honor for me to take part in this great tribute to a man I love dearly, the one and only Coach Kojoyian. So thank you, Armen.
Thank you.